My name is Lucas. This is our Professional Development Day webinar. It's going to concentrate on outdoor classroom management, and then I'm going to say a little bit about spring garden preparations at the end. The important part for the PD Day is the outdoor classroom management, and then I'm just adding on a little bit at the end to help you get your garden started if you like this year, and when you're able to. Just a heads up, we are recording this webinar to put on our website. So please feel free to turn off your videos, mic, or if you like, you can just check out our presentation online instead. It will be on our website pretty much directly after this. And okay. So the agenda for the day, I'm going to do a brief introduction. Charlene will do an overview of the outdoor classroom management, and then jump into organizational strategies or organization strategies for organizing kids in the garden. Then Yadli will jump in with behavior management, and then Megan Gall will do equipment and safety towards the end of their presentation. And then I'll jump in with spring garden preparations and support and resources. There is a survey that we'd love you to do after this that is in the contacts right now, the link to the Google Forms survey. It's really easy. Just click on the link, and takes about 3 minutes to fill out. And from there, we will get your name and your email address and school, and then we will make sure that the appropriate people get your information and give you the credit for the PE day. And also we'll send you a copy of everything that we have and all of the handouts that we've sent you. That'll also be on the website after the meeting. And then our executive director, Christina, wants to talk for just a second here.
All right, thank you everybody for being here. It's so great to see everybody's faces. I wish we could do this in person, but here we are. Thank you so much to Lucas, Yadli, Charlene, and Megan for putting this together. This is our first online PD day. It's our first GVI webinar, really. So this is exciting in its own way. I just wanted to pop in just quickly. I know, obviously this is an awkward time to talk about getting back into school gardens. We have been informed that the school grounds are closed. We were told that by the administration. At the same time, we want to know if teachers have gotten approval or thumbs up from their principals to use the school grounds. If that's the case, we want to be as supportive as we possibly can. Growing food for your family and providing space for other people to grow food for their homes is essential right now. It is deemed an essential activity under the executive order that the governor issued. So that activity is doable. So we just want to, we are here to be as supportive as we can. So if anybody has approval from their principal to utilize the school garden, we can provide, cloth face coverings and seeds and seedlings and gloves and sanitizer and all that good stuff. On the flip side, if you don't have approval, but you know that there's a family that wants to use the school garden at this time to grow food for their tables, please let us know, and we'll do what we can to reach out to the principal or the superintendent and see if we can get approval and open up the space, if that makes sense. So keep in touch. Let us know what the story is at your site, and we'll be as supportive as we can, like I said. Either way, we wanted to kind of be able to provide this opportunity so that you guys could kind of keep school gardening top of mind and get ready to jump back in with your students whenever that time is. So I'll pop it back over to Lucas. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina. All right, and so I'm just going to go into a little bit about Green Village Initiative. A lot of you already know a little bit about Green Village Initiative and our mission to grow food, knowledge, leadership, and community through urban gardening and farming to create a more just food system in Bridgeport. We aim to help teachers, students, and community members get involved in addressing food insecurity issues and the benefits of gardening by offering support for building and planting their own gardens in Bridgeport. We also run the educational Reservoir Community Farm. Many of you have already visited with or without students. We invite you to come learn and grow with us there on volunteer and workshop days, which will vary this summer. Please check out our website, and there will be opportunities. They just will be a little bit limited this year. Won't be every Saturday, but we will try to do more webinars and have more educational opportunities for the community. We also run our youth leadership program that employs high school students to work with us and learn leadership skills while we work on addressing the systemic inequalities that cause poverty and hunger in our city. So we hope you get as involved as possible. There's all sorts of ways to get involved on our website. So please check out that and come see us this year. All right, and sorry to subject you all to this, but that's me. And I'm school garden crew for Green Village Initiative, and I also work up at the Reservoir Community Farm in the summer. All right, and then Charlene will introduce herself.
Yes, hi everybody, good afternoon. My name is Charlene Rodriguez and I'm a first-year Food Corps service member at Green Village Initiative. I've served at Multicultural Magnet and Lewis Marin Elementary.
Thank you, Charlene. And Yadi?
Hi everyone, I'm Yadli. I'm also a first-year service member at Green Village Initiative, and I have served at Reed School and Discovery Magnet.
Great. Thank you, Yadli. And Megan?
And I'm Megan Gall. I'm really happy to be here. And this is my first year serving with Food Corps, and I'm serving with East Hartford Public Schools.
All right. And then I think we're going to jump right into our outdoor classroom management overview with Charlene.
Thank you, Lucas. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. For the first half, we're going to be talking about some outdoor strategies that Yadli, Megan, and I have come up with in this year. So we're going to be talking a little bit about how to organize your time outside, some behavioral management strategies, and equipment that would be useful, and some safety tips. Next slide, please. Okay, so when it comes to setting yourself up for success, it helps to keep a few things in mind. The first thing would be, plan your outdoor lessons in advance. That might sound obvious, but honestly, it takes a little bit more effort to plan your outdoor lesson, because you want to be able to engage all the students as much as possible, and be mindful of those that are able to do group work, those who would prefer to be more independent. So just to keep everyone engaged in the garden. So it does take some thought. If you're looking for resources, as Lucas said at the end of this presentation, we'll be talking about some of the resources that we put together for you guys. That would be on our GVI's website, and you can find lesson plans and garden activities there as well. The second tip that we have for you is to recruit volunteers. So think about inviting parents, guardians, grandparents. Think about inviting another teacher, maybe even high school schoolers, but just try to get another adult in the garden is super helpful. I know, speaking for myself, I can't imagine bringing 25 kids out into the garden space without my teacher. And it just helps with time management, which I can tell you from experience, time seems to fly when you're out in the garden having fun. Now, as far as reserving time in the garden space, Some schools might have a calendar. If you know who your school garden coordinator is, maybe reaching out to them, seeing if there's a calendar that they manage, just so we can avoid conflicts. If you don't have something like that, I know at MCM, Multicultural Magnet, there's a school-wide calendar where I would then go and write, write down the day, the time, and which class I was going to be out in the garden with. And then ensure your tools are available, garden tools are available. Some schools have a shed, which is awesome. If you do have a shed near your garden space, I would just check that and make sure you have enough tools and supplies for your students. If you don't have a tool shed, I recommend checking in with your facilities manager or your custodian. Find out if there is a spot where tools are kept. Another tip I have for you is to gather all your materials in advance, not just for your lesson, but some safety equipment as well. Or at least there's 3 things I want to highlight. One being invite your students to put on sunscreen or bring sunscreen. So having that available, wearing hats, and then having a water cooler, or if your students already bring water bottles to school, having them bring that with them to the garden. And then the third important thing would be to have a first aid kit with you. Next slide, please. Routines are extremely important, just like they are indoors, they're important outdoors for organizing your class structure and for time management. Establishing routines will help manage expectations, the children's behaviors, and promote safety. And each class should follow a similar structure. So I invite everyone, if you are not familiar with your garden space, to just go out there, check it out, see what would be an appropriate spot to gather, to have a large class gathering, and then also to pre-select spots that would facilitate small group structures would be extremely important. A tip that I have for you is when you're selecting your spots, especially for the large group gatherings, if you have a shaded area, that would be good. And even better, a spot where the kids can sit down if you don't have benches or stumps or something like that for the kids to sit down. From experience, I can tell you students, especially the older ones, will be very vocal about being uncomfortable in the garden. So if you can make them be comfortable, it will help your class go a lot smoother. Tip number 2 would be develop outdoor cues for attentions and transitions. This is especially important. I know we all have them for when we're in the classroom, but they may not be appropriate outdoors just because there's distractions and just noise. So if you, for example, at MCM, our garden is by the parking lot. So if we're having a lot of traffic come in and out, it can be really noisy. And, environmental distractions like the wind. So having a physical cue or a loud sound, you can make them garden related. So sometimes I'll use like a wolf howl or, a sound another animal makes to get their attention. So if you can make it audible and physical, that would be really great. The next tip I have is to start your class with an opening activity. The next slide, I'll talk a little bit about it more, but it's helpful when you're getting your class out there. They're going to be, they're going to be really excited about being in the garden. So you want to set them up with the right mindset to stay safe, but also to engage. So opening up with an activity is helpful, and then making space at the end of your time in the garden for cleanup, closing, and reflection. Next slide, please. So for opening activities, the first thing I would say is determine whether you want to start this indoors or outdoors. Depending on the weather, let's say it's a really windy day, it might be better for you to start your activity indoors by doing an overview of the lesson, garden rules, agreements, expectations, going over job and role assignments, etc. Just so you can ensure that all students get that valuable information. Afterwards, you can take your students outside and you can engage them in singing songs. I know that I've utilized Banana Slug String Band, which you can find on YouTube. They have a lot of great songs that you can sing in the garden. Another activity that I like to do a lot with my students, and this is just to calm them down, especially if they've come from gym or they were just outside at recess, just to calm them down and get them into the right mindset. So doing like garden yoga, following the life cycle from seed to a fruiting plant is really, it's really cute, and kids seem to like it too. You could play some icebreakers like the great wind blows. So for example, if I'm doing a seeding activity, I might say, the great wind blows if you like pumpkin seeds. And this is just a good way to explore what kids have in common and what they don't, especially about foods that they might like to eat. Another game you could play, or another intro strategy would be like, what fruit or vegetable do you want to be today? And you can, customize this based on your lesson, and then play a game of I Spy. Next slide, please. When it comes to setting up your lesson, the first point I have for you is to think about creating small tasks. The smaller, the better. And I can give you a quick example of what that looks like. So let's say you're in the garden and you have a list of activities you need to do. You need to weed, you need to maybe add some leaf mulch, you need to harvest. If you're, say, watering the beds and you have 6+ beds to water, you can easily have 6 students water the bed while the rest of the class is just looking at them water each bed with a hose. Or you could take that one activity and break it down into something a lot smaller, such as if you had everyone have a bowl, right? Bowls are great because you can use them for watering, from adding greens to the garden, and you can use them for harvesting. So if everyone had a bowl, the teacher would then fill a bucket with water. You can line up your students and you can have them with their bowl come and take a bowl of water, go to the assigned beds and water a plant. So it's a simple tool, but it's a good way to take an activity and break it down so that every student can be involved. And then doing small group activities is really great. So doing using a couple strategies like think, pair, share, fishbowl, which is where you invite students to kind of talk about a topic and share their opinion about it, and then they can discuss what each other's opinions on that matter, or you can have a student-led discussion. So small group strategies are the best. And then having rotating stations. So again, when you're thinking about how you can break up your lesson into activities that everyone can engage, you can do this in 2 ways with rotating activities. One, you can set up stations and you can break your students up into smaller groups, and each one will have the groups rotate within those stations. Or you can create jobs that need to be done at each garden bed and assign a group to do that specific job. So let's say you have those 6 garden beds that I was talking about earlier, and you have groups 1 through 6 or 1 through 5, and each one of you give them all 5 minutes to go to each bed and do one specific job. So group 1 is going to weed, group 2 is going to water, group 3 is going to plant, group 4 is going to harvest, and group 5 might do some mulching. So those are some strategies that I know we've all used with our students in the garden. And then I would also say, in addition to cleanup, closing, and reflection, just building in some time from free exploration. This would give the kids a chance to see what's going on in the garden. It is a living space, so every time they get a chance to explore, they're going to learn something new and be able to report out during reflection. And it also gives the students a sense of ownership of that space, that it is their space to be able to be themselves, explore, and have fun. And now I think I'm gonna pass it on to Yadley, who's gonna talk to you guys about behavioral management strategies.
All right, thank you, Charlene. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'll be talking about behavioral management for this portion of the presentation. And we'll mainly be talking about setting expectations, setting garden safety rules, and set garden roles. All right, so first is to set expectations. I think establishing behavioral expectation provides just a consistent way to teach your students what appropriate behavior looks like, especially in the garden, considering it might be a new environment for a lot of students. It's important to set that expectation before heading out if this is their first time being in the garden. When your expectations are clear and visible, students are taught that the expectations when they get feedback on their performance, they're more likely to engage in that desired behavior in the garden. So just a nice way to do that is just by picking 3 to 5 different expectations that you want to get out of your students in the garden. I gave kind of 3 examples: be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. You can really kind of change it up, but just picking those 3 to 5 behavioral expectations prior to entering the garden just sets you up for a really great lesson, and helps you just establish something that your students will always remember when heading out into the garden. So keep it specific, keep it clear, and you know, when those behaviors are performed the way you like them, you'll likely to see your students engage in more of that behavior. So just 3 examples would be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. Next slide, please. Next, we have garden safety rules. So again, if this is the first time that you're bringing your students out into the garden, it's important to set or facilitate a discussion about respect and safety in the garden. And a great way to kind of do this that's really interesting and fun that you can do with your students in the classroom is getting a chart paper or a poster board and just going around the class and asking your students to list some of the important garden safety rules that should apply in their school garden. And a lot of the answers that you might get from your students are things like no running, no standing in garden beds, keeping our hands to ourselves, and the list goes on. Students definitely tend to have a good knowledge of what safety could look like in the garden. So you'll get a lot of really great answers, and feel free to also chime in on some of your own. But just having this become a class discussion is a really great way to have the students aware of what garden safety rules mean, and also just giving themselves accountability and their classmates. So do this as like a really great activity that you can do just to get them excited, but also to inform them that being in the garden does require safety rules, because we want everyone to be safe. We don't want anyone to get hurt. So make this like a class activity that's fun, engaging, and also try to bring these garden rules up every time you head out into the garden, if this is just the first few times. And then after that, I think the students should definitely get a good sense of what garden safety rules look like. But for the first few times, just continue to reiterate the rules and remind them. Even when you're outside, continue to remind them. If you see that some of the students are not following the rules, just reiterate the rules and make sure that everyone's being safe. Next slide, please. Next, we have garden rules. And providing each student with the role in the garden can really help them focus on a task instead of multiple different tasks. So it'll help you just be more organized and be able to manage your students in the garden. For example, you can assign roles prior to getting outside in the garden. A couple of really great ones are timekeepers and tool holders. I find that when you have a timekeeper, it also helps you just keep track of how long you guys have been in the garden, but also the timekeeper usually likes to float. They can help out in other places where they can, but for the most part, it's really great to have a timekeeper. Sometimes you might get sidetracked and they might tell you you have 15 minutes left before you have to go back inside. So that's a really good role that you can assign to a student. It's a really helpful role. Another one is the tool holder. So if you are a teacher that has tools in a closet or in a storage room in the school, assign this role to maybe a couple of students. They can be the ones to gather the tools like shovels, water buckets, gloves, anything that you really might need when you're heading out into the garden. So that could be assigned to a couple different students, but assign these roles before you get into the garden. Remind everyone of their roles and demonstrate what is expected of each role. So if you're doing things like garden activities outside and you have certain groups that are going to be weeding or harvesting, whatever that role is that you have assigned, when you get out into the garden, try to just remind everyone. I know that when you get outside, people might want to do other things, and that's fine, but just try to remind them of the roles that were assigned prior to heading out into the garden, and then try to demonstrate what that role could look like. So if you're weeding and demonstrating, that way your students can kind of visually see what is expected of them or what the role may look like. So you can show a couple students what to weed for. You can show a couple of students what to harvest and how to harvest properly. Just showing them and demonstrating what that role could look like. Another great way to assign roles when you're doing garden activities, there's a whole bunch of garden activities that may require you to separate your students into groups. So doing the count off method I find helps a lot. It's a nice random way to assign roles, and it's random and fair. So having each student count a number from 1 to 4 individually, and then telling all the 1s to separate and go into a corner, and telling all the 2s and the 3s to join with each other is a really great way to just make groups. And then from there, you can assign the 1s to go do a specific garden role, and then assign the 2s to go do another garden role. So if you're kind of in the midst of doing garden activities and you want to do it randomized, that's great. The count off method is a really great method to use if you're doing that. Another role that I think is actually pretty useful is having a designated safety person. And that person may not always want to do something in the garden. They might want to be more to themselves. So that's okay. You can have them be a garden safety patrol or a garden safety manager of some kind of just keeping track of what's going on in the garden. I'm sure there's going to be more than one person to help you out. But if you have a garden safety monitor, whatever you really want to call it, that'd be a really great way to just have a good idea of if everyone's being safe and if everyone's following the rules. That's a really great role to have for a student. So you can get very creative with the different roles that you can assign, as long as everyone's doing something and is having fun and learning in the garden. That's really all that matters. Just get creative with the roles that you can. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we have the MVPQ directions, and the MVPQ directions are really great when you're establishing instructions, but it's also great when you want to clearly establish your instructions. And MVPQ is basically an acronym. The M stands for movement, the V stands for volume, the P stands for participation, and Q is cue. So I kind of have this sentence just to kind of help you kind of visually see what I mean here. But when I say go would be the cue. So when I say go, or when I count down from 1, 2, 3, it would be the cue. Other examples. You will go to your assigned garden bed, which would be the movement, and weed the unwanted plants, which would be participation, at a volume level of 1, which is the volume. So this is just the way that you can make sure that you have all of your directions clear And that way students can kind of be able to go to their assigned roles or the assigned activity and participate in a more manageable way, instead of just saying, all right, you go here and you go here and you go here. There's not really a lot of clear instruction there. So you can say, when I say go, you or group 1 will head to this bed and weed the unwanted plants at a volume level. And when I say go, group 2, and etc. So just kind of use this as like a, great way to establish clear instructions, especially if you have a large class. It'll just help you out so much more with behavioral management. Next slide, please. All right, so now we have outdoor strategies. And these are just really great ways to be able to manage your classrooms in the garden and just kind of bring the behavior down to a more calming level. These are really great strategies to just get everyone's to be more stand still, calm, relaxed. You can use call and response strategies. There's a whole list of them. And you can get creative with it. You can use the ones that you already use in your classrooms already on a day-to-day basis. But call response strategies are just ways that you can say something and your students can respond to let you know that they have your attention. So if you want to get more creative with being in the garden, you can use bird calls or an animal sound of some kind to just get your students to just catch your attention. If they're all doing something different, it could be kind of crazy sometimes. So using that call and response, trust me, they will definitely hear it if you do something like a bird call or something. But use a call and response strategy if, timekeeper says we got 5 minutes left and, we need to get back inside. So use that when you just need everyone's attention. Small group check-ins are amazing because when you're doing small group works, like what Charlene said, small groups are better. But you can have these groups be in small groups located in different parts of the garden and have them just talk about things like, what are their names? What's a favorite vegetable that they enjoy? What's something that they want to learn in gardening or about gardening? And just have them check in with each other. It's a great way for them to just more connect with their classmates while they're outside. Maybe they don't normally connect with their classmates inside, but this is a great way to do that outside. It's a new environment. Also set a no tolerance rule. I know we did safety in the first couple of slides, but just setting a no tolerance rule is really great and important. For example, just using tools for their purpose only, or use tools with respect. So when those rules are broken, it could really affect the safety of everyone else. So it's just set the no tolerance rule to let them know that certain behavior is unaccepted. So just try to make that very clear. Another great strategy to kind of just get everyone to be more aware of their environment and their surroundings is the I notice, I wonder technique. And each student will basically just take a moment to themselves where they notice something that they see, or they notice something that they smell or hear and wonder. So I notice birds chirping. I wonder what breed or what type of bird or species it is. So things like that are really great to just get students more aware of their environment and their surroundings. It really does bring the behavior down to a really calm level. One last strategy is the grounding method. And if you haven't heard of it before, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can use your different senses to just notice things around you, but also grounding more so with yourself. And you just basically could ask your students to notice 5 things that they see that are the color blue or green. You could really switch it up. 4 things that they feel, so they could be feeling the grass, they could be feeling the soil, the leaves. 3 things that they hear, and that can range from animals to the wind to leaves. 2 things that they can smell, and 1 thing that they can taste. And that's a really great way to just get them to try something in the garden, like tomatoes, if that's okay, or yeah, just or to anything, really anything that's edible in the garden. But using that as just a way to be more in tune with themselves and their 5 senses is really, really great. So use these outdoor strategies when you're kind of like more so getting ready to wrap things up in the garden. It's a really great way, or maybe before you enter the garden, just as like a nice calm way to have the students engage in other things surrounding themselves and within themselves. Now we have Megan to talk to you guys about some equipment safety.
Thank you, Yadley. So this slide is all about if you already have established garden bed, you already have plants in your garden, you're ready, maybe you already have, you're ready to get your class out in the garden. So this is a bunch of cute examples because I love gardening, that I love the way that you can put your own artistic creativity into the garden, make it your own. So here's some maps and some different garden signs, some examples. And I like these maps and garden signs because it increases participation, allows for your students to get to know their way around the garden. So this map example I have even has a key, so you can change it depending on what grade you have. So this key even like says specific flowers that they planted. So this is a great way for your kids to not only know what plants you're planting, but where they're going in the garden. And then some cute little signage examples. This could also be a station or a class participation altogether. Some examples I have is some painted rocks, even drawn on some bricks, little popsicle sticks. I know that's what I use